Hey, it's Anthony and Tucker with Land Title, bringing you your Boulder County market update for the month of May 2026. Anthony, what are we looking at today?
All right, so as we kind of focus in on the lender segment for this, I really wanted to highlight a few things. Number one, our under contract rates and our sold numbers are almost identical to a year ago, but the way we're getting there seems to be very different, right? I mean, you can see our active units of inventory are about 11% less. That has really driven down our average sales price somehow because we've had high inventory for so long, right? So we do have 6% less, price, right? So that's made it easier for your buyers. Now, the interesting part is that buyers haven't come out of the woodwork with it getting less expensive. So let's take a look at why that's happening. And I think it's largely due to the detached and attached separation.
Yeah, and so when we're looking at our detached market, right now in Boulder County, we have just over 900 units on the market. Year over year, that's 16% less. If you remember last year, we had this massive stack up of inventory, and that was causing a lot of seller pain, a lot of issues. Now we've kind of worked through that oversupply necessarily, but we're still trying to get realistic on price. So when we're looking at our actives, what we're seeing is Boulder is still holding the majority, about 1/3 of the entire market right now. And that's because of price. It's a little bit higher. It's a little bit higher inventory. But then when we look down across the numbers, looking at our L towns, we've had some nice increases month over month, and those have been pretty hot markets relatively, but we're still down a ton in those L towns in our year over year numbers. And I really like focusing on those year over year numbers because, we can see we're into the 30-40% less inventory. And so in those more median, more in the L towns, more outside of the city of Boulder, prices are a little bit more stable because of that lack of supply, which has been a good sign on the listing side. And for your buyers, hey, they just have still just negotiation right now.
Absolutely. Now, the flip side of the coin is if you've got buyers that are in a tight spot, the attached market seems to be showing a lot more opportunity. The only real issue here is half of the inventory, actually well over half of the inventory, is actually in the city of Boulder. There's been so much inventory saturation in the city. So townhouses and stuff like that, especially out in Longmont, Lafayette, Superior, Erie, those areas, they have more inventory still coming on the market. Boulder is just stuck and stable, and it has so much that sellers clearly don't want to participate in the market right now. But interestingly enough, the one kind of caveat difference than last year is Lafayette has about 25% less of these than it did before. So sort of an inventory tightening there in the one town, but more in line with, I think, the rest of them.
And I think that's more of a product type.
Exactly.
Not as much of, it's not as many condos, more townhouse feel like single families. So looking at our month supply of inventory, what we can see here is, right, for the county, we're sitting at 3.3 months. That's fairly balanced according to kind of what the front range is generally. That's, maybe a little bit buyer favored. But when we look into the submarkets, we really see some differences. When we're looking at Niwot, right, really small market, not a lot of inventory, but they're sitting at 5.5, right, super high price point. Next, Boulder, once again, super high price point. We're sitting just under 5 at 4.9 months. So we can see those markets are going to be leaning much more buyer favored, whereas when we're getting into the Louisville, Longmont, Superior, Erie, Lafayette, Louisville, those are all 2-3 months or less, and where those are really they're going to be feeling a lot different when your buyers are out shopping. They're going to be more competitive. You need to have a little bit stronger offers, and we're also hearing anecdotally of multiple offer situations for those really nice homes that are buttoned up and well priced. They're getting a lot of activity. So it's a little bit of it's two markets in one. Of there's some you have to be really competitive on, and there's others you can circle the wagons and take your time making an offer.
All right, and the attached market is also very, very different, right? I mean, basically you start with Boulder where you're at 6 months of inventory, and it really just goes down from there. 5 in most of the markets, right? So condo townhouse is really struggling. This is huge favored markets, which is really great for all your buyers out there, right? I mean, if they are willing to go look at an attached product, even if it's a townhouse or a duplex or something like that, there's a lot on the market to choose from. They can get a really good deal. The market has been a little unstable, but I think we're coming around here in the next year or two. The only towns that you really need to be concerned with in the attached market, Niwot clearly ignore because there's not hardly anything there.
What that
but
is
Superior has 9 months.
That's all Powderhorn. Powderhorn has a lot of stuff.
It is Powderhorn.
If your buyer is a value
That's not
buyer,
really Niwot anyway.
Yeah, but if they're a value buyer, there's some good stuff over in that Powderhorn area.
There's a lot in some of those condos. Every time I keep looking at these, I'm like, 12 units in this building.
This
15
might
units
cash
in this
flow.
building.
This might cash flow day one at 20% down. Never heard
Did
of
you guys remember when we had investors that used to buy investment real estate in the attached market in Boulder, right? Now you can pencil again. I would go knock on all those doors. Go bug those people, right? Great timing for it.
Now, totally different situation in the detached market for the days in MLS. What we're really seeing is it's not as high as you would think, right? Because kind of what you're hearing is, wow, we thought we have a lot of inventory stacking up. Wow, there's stuff that's not selling. We should have higher days on market. These numbers are really telling me that we're sitting just around 30, little over 30 days on market for pretty much the entire county. And what that's telling me is the items, the homes, the product that is well maintained, really shows well, great photos, they're selling fast. They're
priced right.
And they're priced right. And they're selling fast. Whereas the ones that are taking a long time to go under contract are what's dragging these numbers up. So it's really, like I said, it's almost two different markets based on what the product is. You know, anything that your buyer's writing an offer on that needs a lot of work, needs a large capital infusion, needs big remodel, they have a lot more negotiating power because people are not looking for that product right now.
Yeah, I mean, it could be 2, 3, 4 times as much time, right? So days in MLS for attached market, this is very similar. I mean, you see 60 days, right? It's double what the detached market is. It's right in line with everything else. And some of this, I mean, as long as it's priced right and it's in good condition, it may not sell right away. You may have to wait for the buyer to come around that actually wants that product. And you've felt this for almost 3 straight years now, right? We've seen as inventory rose, it's just a hurry up and wait sort of thing. But if it's not priced right, it just isn't going to sell at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other big takeaway. If we look at it by price range, though, price range is such an important thing. And one thing I really wanted to highlight here is over 2.5 million, we've seen less sales than we've seen year to date in the last year, right? And by a lot. I mean, 30+% at the 3+ million range, 13, 14% at the 2.5 to 3 million range. But what doesn't kind of come out in that is the fact that 2 to 2.5 million, 1.5 to 2 million have really seen an uptick in sales. So as people are getting realistic on price, that's really what's happening here is tons is selling. Buyers are clearly looking. It's not that the city of Boulder has a bunch of inventory with no buyers. It's just they have a bunch of buyers that are really picky and really educated, and they're willing to wait. And they're very patient right now because they're not in any hurry. And so as we've seen that, that's made a big difference. The other part of this market that you can take a look at that's doing pretty well right now, 800 to 1 million more inventory sold than at this time last year. Think all those L-towns out there where buyers are wanting to come back to market, but they're just kind of stuck. You really see it in the 500,000 to 600,000 where a lot of medium buyers would be. First-time home buyers just feel like they can't participate. So that's really where we've kind of been stuck on those sides. But what's going on in the attached?
So on the attached side, what's interesting is we actually did have a few luxury sales, right? Over 1 million. That's a really good sign. We've been getting hammered this year in our luxury attached. But let's go ahead and look at our meat and potatoes because that's really the majority of the market. And what we're really seeing is while we're down year over year in a lot of these price bands, for that 800, almost up to that 1.5, we're seeing a lot of a little bit less inventory, but we're also seeing a lot less sales. So it's not that it's an inventory issue, it's a sales issue. That is what the number one thing is. Just looking at these numbers, we can also tell by our sales what is selling. The only area that we really are up in sales and attached is that lower bottom part of the graph. And that's that, really from 3 to 500,000. And those are our condos. Those are the only area where we're up in sales year to date. Whereas we're looking over on the inventory side, we also have a lot more inventory in those areas, right? Especially that 3 to 400,000, we're at 42% more inventory year to date. And that's what's killing that lower end condo market. That is a huge increase. So the numbers are showing we have a lot of inventory, especially on those lower price bands, those old condos with high HOAs. Those are really what are sitting out there and dragging this whole attached market down.
Yeah, they're clearly coming down in price too, because we never even used to. I actually fought for a few years during the pandemic to get rid of the slide where it says 0 to 299 because I was trying to break up more. And now here we are with things have come down in price enough. We had 36 units on the market under 300,000.
In year to date, that's a 32% increase. That's insane.
It's insane. All right, so look at this one. This is the basically price point for detached, right? And so month supply of inventory, the one thing you got to take away is, yes, all those L-towns have low inventory, but also anything in those lower price points is low inventory. You clearly have people buying at the more affordable price ranges. And in Boulder County, that's all the way up to about 1.5 million, right? Because of the city of Boulder. It's so expensive. But what that means is those are tight. Buyers are going to be in a very different situation there. You get over $1.5 million, buyers have a lot more negotiating power. There's a lot more on the market that's sitting. Not that it's taking a lot longer. Buyers clearly just won't look at product that isn't buttoned up and at the right price.
Yep.
You can see it too, because look at 2.5 million, right? Out of the 3 sales we had last month, they went in 7 days. So the good stuff is selling. That's interesting to see. Some of it's taken a little bit longer, but really 30 to 45 days is pretty quick for the detached market.
Yeah. Now looking at attached, different story, right? We're starting at our lowest month supply of inventory. Our fastest part of the market is that 0 to 300,000, and that's starting at 4 months supply. It just shows how drastically different. That's double the fastest price band in detached. So we're just seeing, your buyers have a lot of options on the attached product across the board. And especially when they get into that luxury side, there's not a lot moving. There's a lot of room for negotiations, especially if they're looking for that lock and leave higher end product over $1 million. There's a lot of inventory, and that month supply of inventory is starting at 16, jumping up to 29 months for the 2 to 2.5. That's tough. That's tough if you're on the listing side, which is good for you as the lender.
All right, so let's talk about average sales price for a second, because I think this is the elephant in the room that everyone's asking about, right? If you look at over the last 12 months in detached single family, the entire county has come down 3%. Now, what's really happening? Now, I think the one thing you need to remember, City of Boulder, it shows the worst on paper, and it shows it's minus 8%. Now, a lot of this is luxury stuff coming down in price because the median is really stable and people are buying it. And it really has increased just like most of the other towns at that 2-3% range, right? And that has really skewed the price of overall for the county, right? The other interesting thing is Niwat's showing a 10% increase in price. So the only thing Niwat's selling is luxury real estate, and people really are going out there and purchasing it. So when you kind of look at that, those are like the two ends of the spectrum. You've got the really high end that is kind of coming down to reality a little bit. And then you've got everybody else, which up or down, 2-3%, it's really stable, and detached has been doing that for an entire year.
Yep.
The attached market, Tucker, tell us what's happening
here. A little different. So, looking at the last 12 months, we've come down about 5, almost 5.5%. But when we're looking into where do we have the most inventory in attached, City of Boulder and Longmont. City of Boulder, because it's a higher price point and even more attached than Longmont, we're down 9% over that last 12 months. And that does seem about right. Sure, I hate saying that, but it really does, because we're also not getting those high-end sales. That also skews that number a little bit higher. But also the price really is dropping, not just the average, but the median is dropping as well. And I was hoping after the January, February we were going to kind of start bouncing off the bottom, get some stability. Nice. We're not in control of the government, so people make their own decisions. And so when we're looking at Longmont, though, they've had some decrease in price, but not nearly as much. And I think that's really kind of driven towards their products never had that same inflation that the City of Boulder attached had during COVID. That went through the roof, if you all remember. And now we're coming back down to reality. And it's just been a long, slow, painful slide. And when we're looking at just this graph, really from Q1 of 2023 on the red line, you can just see, if you just kind of imagine that aggregate line coming across of that average, it's just a slow tick down, right? You can see where we hit in the average in Q1. We're up to 700,000 as our average. Highest we've hit this year, 600,000, right? It just shows how different it is with interest rates, and how attached is even more interest rate sensitive than our detached market.
Okay, so the last 2 slides we have to talk about are percentage sold price to list price. This has been really fascinating this year, because we've been in this really kind of sluggish market for a few years. Now, all of a sudden this year, because we have shorter inventory, things have really bumped back up, and buyers have way less kind of negotiating power than they've had before. If you look at the year-over-year change, we're 1 whole percentage point higher. And what this really tells me, and what you can tell your buyers, is they can't go in asking for the world, right? They can't go in under asking price, with concessions and the whole bit. It's really starting to see some of that turn a little bit in those median to average price ranges. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not a lot to go negotiate on, because there's a lot sitting on the market. But the good product is really going to go closer to asking price. And this is the peak of the market, right? May is usually the highest list sale price. Sometimes it's June, but we're a little better, and they have a little less power than before. You get to the attached side, and it's sort of similar, but not really, right?
It is similar because folks are not writing these offers, right? We're not
Right.
seeing these offers come in with 7%, 8% less than asking price. They're waiting for the listing to drop. They're waiting for the price reduction before they go and revisit. And I think this is a great slide for if you have anyone even thinking about attached as a lender, right? Go, recommend to the agent. Yeah. Go write the offers. And if they say no, they say no. But you have to start that conversation. And I think there's a lot of opportunity because where these numbers are showing, they're, buyers are waiting. Your clients, as you know, are waiting for that price drop, and then they're going to take a look at it. Right now in this market, you can push them to go take a look at that and then write an offer. And if it's right, hey, they may renegotiate a little bit, but you have the upper hand in this attached market. Go get some things bought.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to reach out to us if you have any other data needs or, of course, for the title stuff that we do as well. And if you want to hear more from us, you can always like and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.